Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Well. Good evening, Fade to Black. Yeah, today's Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. Let's do this, man. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. All right, I've got everything situated in here. I think I do. I'm just old. I gotta have things it's just gotta be right. It's gotta be right. Or I can't concentrate. I don't know what happened. I used to be young, cool, fresh, and to the curb. I'm not anymore. And so help support the show and all of our hard work, because I need hats for my gardening. Yeah, I'm old. I got to wear a hat now. Sunscreen on my nose. And you can help me do that by getting yourself a Fade to Black t-shirt. We have 2 shirts, 2 ways to get them. The links are below. Get a Game Changer membership and help Jimmy to help the slowing process of becoming the grumpy old man. Yeah. This week on Fade to Black, amazing week. And Monday night, we had Shannon Taggart on the show talking about invisible realms. Amazing conversation. Last night, Lionel Friedberg was with us. He's a great filmmaker and author. That was an amazing conversation. Tonight, it's Richard Dolan. Richard is back with us. He's going to help us close out the week. I've called the show tonight Our UFO World. I don't even know what that means. You know, with Richard, I've done so many shows with Richard, so many conferences, so many things over the year, you know, and I'm just trying to stay fresh and to the curb. So what do? Well, call it Our UFO World, your UFO world, his UFO world, and then add update after that, and I'm safe, because we're going to talk about everything tonight. Tomorrow night, it's our once a month AMAAJA, Ask Me Anything. We do that once a month. It is going down tomorrow night. I have 5 major events coming up in the next 4 or 5 months. The Conscious Life Expo next week. I'm hosting it again this year. 10 straight years I've been hosting this event at the LAX Hilton, February 7th through the 10th, 2025. And I have got a major update, and I'm just going to announce this now in real time from my text. All right. Are you ready? Now check this out. Danny Goler is going to be at the Conscious Life Expo. This was just booked yesterday. Danny Goler, if you haven't seen the videos, Danny Goler, I'm going to ask Richard about this. Danny Goler posted these videos, and they are amazing, by the way, of viewing code in the air, computer code like the Matrix that's all around you, with a laser while doing DMT. Holy crap. Danny Goler is going to be at the Conscious Life Expo. He's going to be there Saturday morning at 10 a.m. And that right there, I am so excited about this. I can't wait to meet him. And that's worth the price of admission right there. Paula Harris has also just been added in the last couple of days. So there you go. I'll talk more about all of this tomorrow night. I just found out right before showtime. Then I'm heading to Sedona for Rise of the Guardians. That's March 29th and 30th in Sedona. Then I'm heading to the Midwest for the Contact Modalities Expo, Delavan, Wisconsin, May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Then back here for Contact in the Desert, May 29th through June 2nd in Palm Springs, California. Then I'm heading back to Peru with Brian Forrester for the Inca Celebration of the Sun on the solstice, June 17th through the 27th. Now I got all of that out of the way. Danny Goler, man, at Conscious Life Expo. Tonight, it's Richard Dolan. Now, it's going to be a full night of conversation. We're going to be talking about UFOs, UAPs. I want a full update of his thoughts of ET contact and disclosure and what is going on, not only around the world, but with his new frigging book that we've been waiting 8 years for. He is one of the best known UFO researchers in the world. He's the author of several groundbreaking books that I read every single day. And not only that, but one of the coolest things you can do with the internet is go to richarddolanmembers.com. There, I said it. The links are below on our website and throughout social media. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Richard Dolan. Richard, good evening, young man.
Good evening, Mr. Jimmy. Happy to be here. And thank you for that nice little plug for my website.
You know, the intros for you, although creative and improvised, they just get better. It's like fine wine, isn't it? I'm getting really good.
You're amazing. I was in awe.
Yeah, I'm getting really good.
I appreciate it.
You know, Richard, I'm going to start here. I'm not going to start with music. I'm going to start here. You and I, we would go to a conference. You know, let's back this up a decade or more, right? Okay. And we were the young guys. Right?
I remember.
Yeah. We were the young dudes. We were the young, fresh, hip guys.
Yeah.
Right? And now we're the old guys in the room. Yeah. We are the ones that you and I admired and would love hanging out with and sitting down and talking. We're now, you know, Uncle Jimmy and Uncle Richard, and that we're those guys.
Yeah, you know, I was when I first entered the UFO field, I was in my 30s, and I had big round glasses, black hair, and if you look carefully, you could find hope in the glint in my eyes. It was all there.
Right.
And now we're talking 25 years or more later, and you know, I think it's because the last decade has been such a transformation to this community of ours, our UFO world, as you put it, that there's been a lot of changes. And really since 2017, 2018, I'm sure you've talked to many, many people who've had the same story. It's like a lot of folks got interested in this field at that time. And so they had their own learning curve. And a lot of them are very sophisticated now, like they're deep, they're in it. So there's been a lot of new voices, which we're all much better off for having I think a way broader community of engaged people. A lot of them do podcasts, a lot of them just do research, but there's just more people. And I do think that's what made us both seem older, because like we're still from the before times. We're there from prior to 2017. And in fact, we were both working it for quite a while prior to 2017. And so I think like we've gone through that transition.
We have. And, you know, and in 10 years, you and I are going to be at some conference together, sitting at the table at the end instead of the table at the front, right? And complaining. And Tracy's going to come up and go, hey, guys, they've got really good soup today. You know,
we'll be getting lifetime achievement awards, you know, from
lifetime, exactly.
That's when you know you're ready to kick it. You know, it's like, here you go, you had a great life.
And I find it easier to get angry today, and not that I didn't in the past, of course, but what I mean by that is I was always trying to make everybody happy. I didn't want to offend. You know, I just wanted to, you know, just try to present, try to present things in every light and every angle and every side, whether I agreed with them or not, because I just wanted everybody to win second place, right, or to get a first place trophy. And I'm phasing out of that now.
Yeah, I know why.
Yeah.
Anyone who get past 60. Or it doesn't even have to be that. It depends on your personality. But you get to a certain age and you realize I don't have a lot of time anymore. And you realize time becomes by far your most precious commodity. And so you do not want to waste it on what you consider to be BS. And I've I've long since hit that point. I can tell you right now. But on the other hand, I'll say this: I actually often won't get angry at a lot of things the way I might have in the past. I do think becoming older, I like to think it's helped me with some perspective and to be more accepting of things that don't go my way, of learning that I can't control everyone. I don't have that power. And I've really tried to learn to let go of things that are not in my control, and I think that's just part of maybe getting old enough. But the other side of it is I don't like to have my time wasted. I really don't. I do get my blood pressure will rise. Tracy could tell you, this is the one thing that will trigger me is if I feel like someone's wasting my time.
You don't understand minutes and days when you're 20 or when you're 30. Yeah. You don't. In fact, you don't give a shit because life lasts forever.
Yeah, right? Like everything works perfectly. Like you can run without, getting winded. You can just keep going and going.
Eat what you want.
Like another day.
Yeah, yeah. And so I did. Now you're a college educated man. I'm going to throw a quick math question out to you. Right, a little riddle. Okay, you ready?
Okay, we'll see.
2,500, 25,000, 250,000, 2.5 million. How many days do you live if you live to the age of 70?
Oh, man. Well, let's see. Oh, crap, man. You're going to do this to me? I don't know. 500,000?
25,000 days.
25.
That's it.
Yeah, that's not much.
That's nothing.
Listen to me, 500,000.
Yeah, but that's honest. There's nothing wrong with saying that, right? And so now here we are at the age of 60. Yeah, and I don't want to get morose, but if there's 25,000 days, if you make it to 70 and you're at 60, how much you got left in your pocket, man?
365 times, if you're lucky, 10, so maybe 3,000, 3,500.
That's it.
Yeah, it's not that much.
No, so don't waste my time, man.
I want my 500,000.
Yeah, exactly. Don't waste my time. Don't waste my time like I did on PBS this week. Can we start with PBS, Public Broadcasting?
I'm always happy to talk about PBS.
All right.
The worst.
Yeah.
Look.
No,
I'm
it's
just going to
not
dunk on you. We talked about this before we went on the air, and you're like, I watched PBS, and I'm like, what is wrong with you, man? When was the last time PBS was good? And then we did 10 minutes on Ken Burns, who we both love.
Right there. So Ken Burns he's worth the price of admission to PBS. He's a national treasure, man.
He's amazing. I do love Ken Burns' work.
Okay.
And nothing else about PBS anymore. They're no good.
So
you get suckered in.
Pops it. Yeah, they've hit my wallet for $5 a month or $10 a month for 25 years. And I've got that on auto pay, by the way. About to be canceled because in my thing, right? And I'm scrolling down, there's PBS documentaries right there, my PBS subscription. And a brand new documentary is out. It's called What Are UFOs? And I'm thinking, Ken Burns, man, we're going to get the Ken Burns PBS treatment for UFOs. This is going to be great. So I watch it. This is 2 days ago. Now, I'm going to start with this, everybody. It said 2025, and I was skeptical about that. And it started off the beginning of the documentary with the New Jersey drones, and we'll circle back to that. So this is fresh. This is like, fresh pot of pasta right into the strainer, man. This is the steam coming off of it. Starring, it's called What Are UFOs? Starring, I'm just going to say this. It's hard for me to get this out of my mouth. Sean Kirkpatrick and Mick West.
There you go. Yeah. Totally predictable.
What are
Yes, of course.
UFOs? Yeah, what are UFOs? And those are your two presenters.
Of course. The only thing worse than PBS is British television. Like you can't get worse than the Brits with programming, but PBS tries very hard. And by the way, both the Brits and PBS are terrible with the UFO subject, have always been. There's no redeeming feature to either BBC or Sky, whatever they've got there. They're predictably awful with the UFO subject, always have been, as is PBS. You should have known better.
So, okay. So check this out. This just popped up. The PBS show on UFOs was disappointing with Mick West and Sean Kirkpatrick, but they had the Nimitz pilots. Okay, so let me back up with this. Yes, they had Dietrich on. They didn't have Fravor. They only had clips of Fravor, but Dietrich they interviewed. She was on camera, and she looked regal. She looked just so good, professional, carries herself well, good public speaker, and they did everything they could to make her nuttier than a bowl of granola. Right?
I believe it.
And the same thing with David Fravor, taking their eyewitness testimony apart, picking it apart. They didn't even allow Dietrich, maybe they did, but they left it on the cutting room floor to explain exactly what she saw. Right? No, they cut her off, and then they went to debunk with parallax what Fravor and Dietrich actually saw.
Yeah, because they weren't there, so they're obviously experts.
Right.
I just love that. I love how they do that. And Kirkpatrick should know better. In fact, he does know better. And we know that he knows better because I'm sure I have spoken to people who have been very upfront with me. Excuse me. And he's been briefed on all the heavy duty stuff. And for whatever reason, he just plays this game of pretend that he doesn't know. Of course he knows.
Kirkpatrick looks in deadpans in the camera and says, I don't know if there's alien life out there, but I do know they have never been here. And there is zero. When I say zero, this is what he says. Zero means zero. There is zero evidence of any alien activity on planet Earth.
Because he's the ultimate authority.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so offensive. And nothing objective, nothing on both sides. None of that. It was very interesting. Now, that's the producer's choice and everything else, but usually any documentary or anything like this but forget PBS or any
NPR, PBS. 10 years ago, it was known that they had a guy who ran CIA psychological operations and running their news.
Yep.
Okay, like this is not a new thing for them. I remember when I was a young person with the glint of hope in my eyes and all of that, I listened to PBS a lot, and I used to listen to NPR. Yes, I did. I thought once upon a time, back in the 1980s and early 90s, I thought, wow, NPR, I feel very educated because they all sound like they don't talk like shock jocks. They are very educated and debonair, and they use educated words and language, and they are absolute shills for the establishment. That's all they are. Now, in their case, liberal establishment, but there's really no difference. They're shilling for the establishment, man. They are every bit as neoconish as the most right-wing of right-wing Republicans.
And you love that. You love that neocon phrasing.
Well,
but see,
they've still got to be swept clean. There's still a virus infecting our society. So yes,
man. If you're in Washington, you're a neocon. I don't care what party you are.
Well, I am. Maybe that's why I'm not
serious. I'm serious. I'm serious. So
yes,
anyway,
Washington. Yes, our establishment is. Well, it's a decaying empire, but it's dominated by these obsolete thinkers. Yes, who still think America is like the dog that can pee on everyone's tree.
I think that. So anyway, so back to neocon, back to NPR.
Back to PBS.
What were we talking about? PBS.
How PBS sucks so hard.
So you know what I used to love about NPR is the host, where they would, okay, I'm paraphrasing. I'm going to make something up, but I want to make you laugh. So filling in this week, I am Jack Smith, filling in for Bob Williams, who's been away for 6 months in Africa studying cucumber cultivation in Zimbabwe. And today's show, we are going to talk about the art of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, a new book out with our guests. And you listen to that and you're like, you get kind of sucked in because it's not your typical programming that you hear when you got some guy yelling in your ear.
The best thing that NPR ever did was sweaty balls, and they didn't even do that.
Man,
that wasn't even them.
No, that was
actually
so
the best
too.
thing that from the 90s, you know what I'm talking about, right? From the early 90s, they had one of my favorite baseball guys. They had Red Barber, who was a great baseball announcer in the 40s and 50s. And by the early 90s, Red Barber was old, but he was just awesome. And he would come on every Friday and talk to Bob. Somebody we used to call him Colonel Bob. Oh, Colonel Bob. Now, I love Red Barber. So that to me was the best thing NPR ever did, for real.
I'm okay. That's
you got to go back 35 years, in my opinion. After that, it was all downhill.
Well, I was so disappointed. I watched the entire. I was hoping for, we just mentioned Ken Burns. I was hoping for that type of treatment into the subject. I wasn't expecting this sensational debunking of humanity.
Well, no, PBS has always been that way with the subject of UFOs. They are not balanced. They're not even smart. They are smart, but they are very devious about their viewpoint, and they're just so goddamn sanctimonious about everything that they say, and they're sanctimonious about UFOs.
But
they know better, and you don't, and they're here to tell you the truth.
For sure.
There's Sean Kirkpatrick saying 0 chance. Like he is this great expert.
They do some really good stuff on ancient Egypt, though, and ancient cultures, and some of that is, but it wasn't always that way with them. Yeah, it wasn't always that way with them. But
I can just see it now. People like Dolan really hating on NPR. Come on, dude, calm down. Well, I'm sure NPR has done some good things. I'm sure, but that has no relevance to today's world. Yes, okay.
Did you ever watch the show Parks and Recreation?
Yeah, I enjoyed it back in the day.
Okay, I am Ron Swanson.
Well, he's the best character on the show.
I
was a big fan of Aziz Ansari, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, so good, man.
He's
so good.
Ron Swanson, dude, was great.
It's so good. So good. He's got this one quote. He goes, I can form a 17-foot canoe out of stretched red mahogany, but I can't make a gingerbread house. And it's just like, with my bare hands. Anyway, so I'm Ron Swanson. And sometimes I think being independent and thinking for yourself is one of the most powerful things that we have as Americans, and the freedom of thought is something that we're supposed to have. And then I go and see something like this on PBS where they are steering the minds. They're not allowing anybody to learn something and make up their own mind. And I just left a really bad taste in my mouth.
Look, I was gonna say better you than me. I'm glad you were able to deal with it, and you came back educated, enlightened about that programming. But
you would have been on, if you would have seen it, you would have been on Richard Dolan Members that day. You would have been really pissed.
I would have loved to trash talk them. Well, I get to trash talk them here, so that's pretty
fair
good.
enough. Fair enough.
I'm happy to do it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm going to pull my best Ron Swanson, though. I'm going to cancel my subscription.
And then, I'm just going to start going off here, but you have to check me here. But the British television, I no longer can allow myself to enjoy it. Like every time they have a decent idea, they somehow find some way to ruin it. I don't understand. I'm going to just stop it right there. I used to love British TV.
Yep.
I can't unwatchable
well,
for me now.
well, because when we were kids, British television was cutting edge.
Yeah, it was. It
It was
was.
cutting edge. It was. We didn't have. There was nothing on American TV like British television until Saturday Night Live, and until that wasn't even close to the absurdity of Benny Hill or Monty Python and some of the other stuff that was coming through. And what's that show about the time traveling doctor? What's that called?
Doctor Who?
Doctor Who. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never seen it. I don't know anything about it.
I feel kind of I've actually never gotten into it.
Yeah,
I've heard the
I
older
don't-
ones are great, but that was ruined from what I've heard.
That's what I've heard.
It's
Right?
been
That there was the old version of that show that was amazing. And,
Yeah.
but
They just
I don't
wreck
know.
it all. They just wreck it all. So
Yeah, I'm gonna be a critic about something I've never seen, so it's not really cool. But
now they're, Britain's now the North Korea of Europe. So good for them.
wow, no politics on the show. Wow,
Oh,
really?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, man.
Wow,
Absolutely.
wow.
Britain.
Well, okay. So before we move
We'll
on,
go. We'll ease our way back.
yeah, we'll
the
ease out of that
precipice.
because I was in London last year, and I stayed on the Thames at this nice hotel.
Mhm.
Where that Ferris wheel thing is, on the river, the big Ferris wheel. Okay, so right there, the Shard, and all that. So I go out of my hotel. I did this a few days in a row, but I just took this long walk. Didn't know where I was going, and walked around London. And holy crap, everything is old. It's so cool. I mean, old. You're walking past stuff. I swear, Richard, on all that I love, that city is over 2,000 years old.
Londinium.
Yeah. So you see an
Londinium.
old building, chances are it's friggin' old, and so I'm standing there. There's this next to my hotel was this little park about the size of a bedroom, maybe a living room. And with these benches, I'm not kidding. It was like this little walled off thing. And there was this plaque. And I'm reading the plaque, and it says, this park was donated to the city of London. I'm not making this up either. In 1701 by so-and-so, with the promise that London would have free spaces for its citizens.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like 1701. Yeah, that is nuts. And it's just like right next to my hotel. I mean, it's right there. That's the cool part about London. I mean, there's just so much culture there, and it's so old, and it's something that we don't have here in the United States, and we don't have any frame of reference to that. You're a historian, right? What kind of culture do we have here? Are we old enough to have a culture?
Yes, America. I mean, first of all, you mentioned 1701. So if you are in New England or Virginia, we have places that are older than that, of course, a little bit.
Founded by people that fled London. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
makes
Harvard
sense.
University was founded before 1701, I believe, 1670 something.
Yeah.
So we've got a little bit. We can eke it out if you're dealing with the Anglo culture in North America. And of course, we do have a prior culture before the English and the Spanish, found this place. So, it really depends on how you look at it. North
Okay.
America has got people going back tens
Well,
of thousands of years.
I guess what I'm saying is I rather enjoyed London. I didn't enjoy the food.
Now,
at
see,
all.
I'm an anomaly because I've actually, I'm going to give the English their credit. I think some of that food, I'm a fan of the fish and chips if it's done well.
Yes.
And I like the mushy peas. I'm not going to deny it.
But the breakfast, the baked beans and scrambled eggs, and
Yeah, it's okay. I can roll with it.
crazy.
I think they get a
bacon.
bad reputation for the food. I'm just going to go out and say this.
But the fish and chips,
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
And
All right.
the English, the Scottish, the Irish, the Welsh, they're good people.
Lovely.
I've had very, very wonderful experiences there, I will say.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I love Great Britain. I couldn't believe the traffic. That was a
It's just
shocker.
been run into the ground.
That was a shocker for me. And I live in LA, and I'm telling you that I look like I'm what's the Jewish with the braids? What do they call that? The Jews with the braids?
I-
I've got that going on. I did it. I did it on my show. I did it on my show. Yeah, go ahead. Make a YouTube clip out of that, everybody. Let's get that out there. News Nation hyped up this presentation from Ross Coulthart, who we all love. Ross is great. More whistleblowers. Now, before we get into this, oh, by the way, Richard, I didn't ask you. Let's make this brief. What was the last song you listened to today?
I didn't listen to almost any songs today, but the last one from yesterday that I can remember was Back to Black by Amy Winehouse, who I very much admire.
She breaks my heart.
She's really, I mean, just amazing, of course.
She breaks my heart.
And she's English.
She breaks
Jewish
my
girl
heart.
from London who sounded like an African-American diva from the 1950s. I mean, how did she do it? She was an amazing, incredible talent, and died way too young at 27. When I first heard her, it was 20 plus years ago, from her album called Frank, which I'm a big fan of. That was more jazzy, and I thought, this young woman, I actually felt like old for the first time. I was like 40. I wasn't that old, but I felt old because I was like, this woman is writing lyrics. Like, you really forget just how advanced she was. She was a deep writer. She dealt with emotionally real stuff in a way that, I don't know, I don't think a lot of other people did. And plus, her talent was just off the charts.
Do you think with consciousness and the way that the universe probably works, that somebody like that is so in the zone with themselves and consciousness and talent and artistry and those things that are involved with that, you're in tune. Do you think they know? Do you think they know that things are imminent? Do you think they have a feeling?
Oh, like they may not live, that type of thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. I know I'm no expert in her life or psyche. I don't want to pretend, but you could tell, she was deeply troubled, like a lot of great artists are. They are often very troubled. It's difficult when you've got that level of talent. You separate yourself from from your fellow humanity in some important way, and that can go to your ego at times, but it can also make you feel different and isolated. A lot of people, they don't realize, like, if you become that famous, it can be very lonely. You spend a lot of days and weeks alone in your hotel room and just hanging out. There's not always people to talk to, except people who want to use you and who want to take advantage of your money and this type of thing. So she, whatever her situation, I think it was a documentary that just came out about her, which I'd like to see. But she was extremely talented, a truly great artist, a truly great artist. And the world was really very shitty to her, in my opinion. I remember when she was going through her, she's doing heroin, I guess, a lot of it. And she was in a really bad way. And I remember, like, on the young YouTube that existed at the time, there were people like ripping on her, making fun of her. And I thought, this is a horrible thing. Like, you've got this amazing human being, this beautiful creator who is like exposing her soul as an artist to the world, and going down this really, really bad cycle. A scary and dangerous cycle that ultimately killed her.
And if there's a harsh reality to this, so you're famous, right? You're famous, and you got a drug problem. How does somebody famous get drugs like that? You're not driving to the bad part of town across the train tracks into the netherworld to score.
Rich people have more than enough drugs, right?
That's right. The people are bringing them to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the messed up part. They
Yeah.
know you've got a problem. They know you can't say it. They know that, and they are just so they can be in your presence.
Yeah.
You know, and that's there was
Totally
nobody
manipulative.
nobody around to say no. You know, and people are afraid of.
You know what it is? We're all, I really believe this. We're all in our own way. We seek to escape from ourselves. And so what do? We watch TV, or we do drugs, or we listen to music, or we do all of these things, whatever they are, rather than sit with ourselves and think about our thoughts and think about our lives and think about our own consciousness in relation to, like, how much time do you have to live? Or what are you doing with your life right now? Like, are you wasting it? You're just going to watch some more TV? You're just going to watch some more watch some more YouTube videos, this type of thing. And we escape from ourselves. And I think that's, in a sense, like, she was smart enough not to escape from herself when she wrote her music and when she performed. Like, you could see she was communing with herself and with the universe, I think. But at other times, like, you just want to escape, and a lot of people will do the drugs. It's an easy way to escape.
It's just unbelievable. There's tragedy and there's no way I can change the world, right? I realize that, but I can do my part and just say too many. In fact, everybody around somebody like that will never speak the truth. They'll always just agree because they don't want to offend you. They don't want to get kicked out of the circle. They don't want, you know, and that's it. And that's a bad. There's a reason why your parents gave you boundaries. Don't go out of the yard. Don't go out of this. Don't stay out too late. Don't do, you know, they get boundaries are needed for everybody. Right. You know, you give somebody no boundaries. That's
the biggest. Yeah, it's a huge problem. And it's not just for people who are like super successful and wealthy. I mean, they get it the worst. But, you know, I remember being 18 years old, leaving my parents' house for the first time, going off to university, thinking, oh, wow, I can run my own life. Really? No, I couldn't. And I didn't. And I made a lot of bad decisions for many, many years because I thought I didn't need any guidance or supervision. And that's just not true. We do. We need.
It's like
we all need boundaries. We all need guidance.
Boundaries. Look at Elvis. You know, you can do whatever you want.
That's right.
Right. And you give that to some and look, you know, Michael Jackson, you know, we can continue with all of this. So speaking of all of this,
yes,
and boundaries, News Nation doesn't have any boundaries. Somebody needs to give News Nation and Ross Coulthard some boundaries.
I don't know. Okay. So I can see where you're going with this. So the hype, there's always a big hype train when it comes to ufology, especially since 2017.
And nobody tells Ross Coulthard no. Somebody needs to be around Ross going, Ross. No, man. No.
I'm going to say this. So I don't know what your ultimate assessment of Jake Barber was. May I offer mine, and then you can bounce in with yours?
Does it involve blinking?
No, I feel that I have no reason to think that he's not sincere. I have no reason to think that he is not honest. He seems all of that. I did appreciate the fact that News Nation Ross brought in a number of other people who were willing to vouch for him, but you know, they did their own due diligence on his background, and I think he checks out. Everything's fine. I have no reason to doubt his opinions. That he believes he transported a non-human craft. What I have said and what I still believe is that the News Nation interview of him is not enough that a skeptic is probably going to be convinced. I would agree with that. So it's not this definitive statement of here's disclosure. That's not the case. And I do think in the build-up to that interview, there was a bit of that type of hype. So I'm going to agree with you there. It was a bit hyped up. But I think it's very important that we do not let the hype and the expectations to jade us too much, because there were good things that did come out of that interview. Just as there were good things that came out of the congressional hearing a few months ago that a lot of people complained about, and they said this was a big disappointment. Look, in the grand scheme of things, all of these little things can be disappointments. When David Grush made his appearance over a year and a half ago, it felt to me and to many of us like a bombshell, but there were other people who said he didn't say anything new whatsoever. Like, there's a lot of people like that. So I think it's easy for us to get jaded because the hype is never going to match the reality. And it's true, like, there's a lot of pressure to build up the hype now. The UFO or UAP, whatever subject is big. It's bigger. It's more mainstreamy now than it's ever been. And News Nation, look, this is part of their business model. This is part of how they make their money. Those UFO shows, I don't know, but I'm going to guess probably get more views and more money for them than most of their other programming. So they're going to push it.
For sure.
So what are you going to sue them because they're making money on the subject? It's like, look, this is what they're going to do. But I will say, I'm going to defend them on this. I think that Ross has approached this with good integrity. I do think they should have been a little more upfront about, like, how is that video of the egg shot? Because it doesn't appear to have been from Jake Barber himself. And they really kind of soft sold that. They soft pedaled it more than I think was justified. Like, it's not going to hurt them by being more explicit and more upfront about what they don't have as opposed to what they do have. And I think it would behoove them to maybe be a little more upfront that way. But overall, I'm very glad, frankly, that we have Jake Barber as part of our conversation now. And Fred Baker, who was interviewed, I think, he had some interesting things to say as well. And John Blitch, who I have a very high regard for his background and what he's had to say. So there's been some very good new people out that I'm very glad that they're in the conversation.
So this is my overall take. Yeah, the hype didn't match what was delivered. That's the first thing. And Ross, who I have a lot of respect for, man, and his book is really good. That first one. And he's been a guest on the show a few times. I like Ross. But when you're hyping and pitching the show in the fashion that he was, saying alien and recovered craft and whistleblowers over and over and over again, it's on a loop, right? It's just repeated. And they're showing the and you're going to have 4 whistleblowers on the show. 4 whistleblowers. Well, there wasn't 4 whistleblowers.
Yeah, no,
and there wasn't an alien craft. There wasn't a video there wasn't any of that. And then it turned out that Jake didn't shoot that video. And when I was watching, so it would have been better to either not have the video at all. If he didn't shoot it, then why show it? That's the first thing. Just let him say his piece. But if you're going to show the video better be something definitive. But by pitching a loaded forward question and statement, preloaded about what's in this video, then people are going to see something different. If that wasn't UFO, right? If that was an alien crash retrieval tied to that video, what are you looking at? You're looking at a sheet wrapped around a sack of potatoes being delivered to troops behind enemy lines.
It could have been something like that.
Yeah.
However,
that was just
part of it is
that misinformation? Is that disinformation?
No,
do it that way?
It's not disinformation. Look,
would you show that if somebody gave you that video,
right?
Would you put that on Richard Dolan members and have your breaking news story and go, man, I've got a crash retrieval with a helicopter?
I would if, like, the thing with video or even photographs for that matter is by themselves, they don't count for anything now. Even like what seems like a good video, because you see a video and we all know there's different ways of faking these things. What I would say, though, is if you have a video combined with a witness who is willing to go on the record and saying, this is legit or this story is legitimate or whatever, that counts for something. Now, where this one falls is that for whatever reason, I don't know where that video came from, but apparently it wasn't from the Jake Barber mission that he was talking about when he transported it. But if that's the case, then is this another example? Like, are they transporting several of these? Now, what we do have is his firm conviction. Okay, take it for what it's worth, that this was nothing like anything he had ever transported before. None of the guys, as he said, believed it was like anything that ever transported, and they believed it was alien. And then he talked about that other craft, the what do you call the Eightgon, an octagon type of, more of a traditional looking flying saucer, let us say. So there, he's got some reasons to think that this was truly exotic, and I respect that. But there were a lot of other important things that he came out with that were beyond this. I mean, my opinion, the fact that he, talked about his experience as a private contractor after leaving the Air Force, because you really get this sense that, as many of us have felt for years, it is the private firms that are the shadows of the UFO world.
Mm-hmm.
And they operate where the governments cannot operate. They are above rules. And he actually got into that quite a bit. I thought that was some of the most interesting information that he put out there. The companies are a shield that are able to hide the truth in plain sight. And he talked about the need for multiple layers of legitimate business cover to do the secret work, which that's not new necessarily. I mean, you've studied this kind of thing, but it was just good for him to get into that. And he talked about how important that was to be able to, he was already a qualified pilot, but he had to go to pilot school because he had to have a job in which this was above board, and all of these other things that he talked about in terms of creating legitimate cover. I kept thinking of, Breaking Bad, where they're running the car wash and laundering their money. They had to have a legitimate business in order to hide the drug money. And that's
a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really
So
good point.
He had a lot of interesting things that are valuable for us to know. So I was actually very grateful that he was able to express a lot of that. And
okay, so let me address your points.
Sure.
Really quick. And this isn't a debate, people, or anything. This is just Richard and I talking like we do when we hang out. So I'm going to go back. You brought up David Grush, and David Grush at least brought the goods. That guy had bullets, and he was ready to use them. And I love that. When it came to Ross and Jacob Barber, what Ross said was going to be dealt with on the News Nation piece was not. Everything was a step short, which is what pisses me off about the subject. David Grush didn't stop a yard short. He didn't. He went
I agree with
first.
I agree he did not.
And with Jacob Ross has got this opportunity. And so I get to the end of it, and was there ever a mention, not only from Ross on his side, but from Jacob or the other whistleblowers, by the way, who weren't whistleblowers? They were just there to talk about his CV, which is an excellent CV. He's got great character. There's no question about that. But was this, did Jacob say that he knows where these alien craft are, that we have these alien craft, that the alien ET craft, alien? No, it was a subject that was completely danced around and was only suggested through proxy and through the hype on the show. And that, for me, I mean, I wanted to just be that old man and start breaking stuff. And that's my point. I mean, if you've got an opportunity, do it. We've already, we're already there. Go for it. And that's what I just felt. Huge disappointment in Ross, not on Jacob, in Ross and News Nation for not for not
Well,
delivering.
we don't know what the behind the scenes conversations with this was. I mean, there were a number of things where they dropped these little tidbits out. So remember the conversation about these so-called these Panasonic tough books. So Jake Barber's talking about, we had this is when in his contractor days now, and they had to go retrieve these for whatever private mega contractor corporation they were working for.
Right.
And that these tough books were in the Sierras, like thousands of feet up, under 9 feet of snow or under 20 feet of water and a lake in the mountains. And I keep wondering, well, who dropped those things there? How did they get there? And like none of that was even discussed. And I wondered, like, why was that not asked? Why did Ross not ask that question? But I have to assume it's because either Jake Barber did not know or was not going to say why, because this might have been some kind of classified thing they couldn't talk about. I don't know what the reason was, but I'm going to assume there's a reason they didn't get into that. Similarly, there was, a couple of other things that just were not, dealt with in as upfront a way as I would have liked.
Like what?
Well, I'm trying to think now. So when he's talking about the 8-gon craft, he actually had a couple of interesting things there, talking about comparing it to the Michael Herrera event from 2009 in Indonesia. It was kind of interesting, but again, we don't know anything about where this stuff happened.
Yeah, you know where I think he got that from?
Where?
Fade to Black. I'm not bullshitting. I'm not bullshitting.
Octagon craft.
Yeah. I called you one day.
You think he's making it up? And he just
Richard,
Fade to Black?
Richard, I called you one day, and I told you about this guy that approached me here in Palmdale in the Best Buy parking lot and told me about the craft that he saw in the 90s in high school that were shaped like stop signs, like octagons.
Yeah.
And I told you all about that, remember? And then later, and you said to me, I've never heard of that before. I said, neither have I, Richard. And so maybe a month later, you were on the show, and then you and I discussed that octagon craft. I have never heard anybody except for that guy in the Best Buy parking lot talk about octagon craft. And because it was over Lockheed and it's here in Palmdale, and I'm telling you the story that he told, okay, all right, I've had a few people. That just feels a little borrowed, is what I'm saying. Feels a little borrowed. Fine, okay. It's not my problem, but you need a little more than that. And Herrera never discussed his craft as being octagon shaped.
I thought he did. No, I thought he did.
I mean, he's been on the show a couple times. But anyway, putting that aside, there was another. I liked the consciousness discussion.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. The psionics.
Yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty
fascinating. That was fascinating. And I mean, you just have to say, is this vindication for Dr. Stephen Greer? I think maybe people are going to make that case.
Yeah.
The thing about Stephen Greer, there are people who really love him and people who really don't love him. I'll just leave it there. But he's been on a few subjects where he does deserve vindication. One is on the privatization of secrecy, which he has talked about for more than 25 years. And he's correct. He is the guy. He's the reason we have the Davis Wilson notes. If it were not Stephen Greer, for him, those notes would not exist, because Thomas Wilson would not have had his wild goose chase trying to get access to
from the Pentagon. Yeah, from the Pentagon meeting. Right.
That was all sparked by Stephen Greer. And the man deserves a credit for that. He did a lot of other things that are, I think, positive. Other things that I personally will take issue with, and I'm not going to get into those things here. But he's done things that are absolutely where he deserves credit, and the CE5 initiatives. And I've been very lukewarm over years about this. I've had many close friends who have insisted to me that the CE5 initiatives work, that they've tried them. I've tried, and I never had success. So maybe it's my fault. My consciousness wasn't, I don't know, but it didn't seem to happen for me. Admittedly, I didn't do it too many times. I also spoken to people who felt that the whole thing was a sham. Definitely people who believe that, but lots of people who don't, and who are very, very adamant about it. And I've always, I respect those people. I respect where they're coming from. And so to hear Jake Barber, Fred Baker talk about this, of course, they're on very good terms with Dr. Greer. And, I guess someone can wonder, are they all just kind of in the same little club here and they all make themselves believe this? But I don't think that's the case. I'm definitely willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. I do think that what they're saying about psionics does not yet amount to proof. Certainly not, but it's worth our time. And it's actually, look, as I've often said, I'm married to a remote viewer. I don't need to be
right,
of the powers of the human mind. I
What
firmly believe that.
what's your take? We're going to head to a break, so you've got 3 minutes to respond. What's your take on the battle of possession of whistleblowers? That's everybody wants to own the whistleblower and reveal the next batch, or with that ours are legit and theirs are not, and don't listen to those whistle. It's why is this going on, and why does it matter?
I'm not really that on top of this drama, I guess. I mean, we've had alleged whistleblowers for decades in this field. I mean, that's a word that people love. And and as we all know, we don't have to mention names here, but we had a lot of fake whistleblowers in the UFO community over the last decade and more. A lot of them. And it kind of took the shine off the meaning of the word. When you have fake whistleblowers pretending that they, can do all these crazy things, and that they're the star of their own B movie and they're saving the world and all of that stuff. So now, as far as now, I don't know who's battling to control these whistleblowers. I'm not aware of it. I mean, are you referring to Stephen Greer, or are you referring?
I'm not going there. There's no need to. But what I just find it disheartening that we are fighting each other, banging on each other, criticizing each other.
I'm not.
No, not you. over UFOs. Is it worth it? Why can't we just be on the same team here?
No,
I think that's more
never
important.
been the case in this community.
Yeah, I know. It's
people who are not in all the personalities, and they probably do realize, but a lot of the researchers, people in this field, do not get along. It's the reality. Why don't they get along? Well, there's different philosophical approaches. Some of these people, in my opinion, are not honest players. I think that they're working for someone behind the scenes. I firmly believe that. And there's a lot of bad faith among some of these folks. And there's a lot of nastiness among some people who've entered into this field, and they love doing that. So there's a lot of lack of trust.
The newcomers to this field since 2017, they would all benefit from going back and reading the long story and history of Bill Moore.
Mm-hmm.
To think that we're full of drama right now, and this is, just go back and check that out from 1980 to 1990.
That's right.
Go and read and talk about an influencer.
He was the number one UFO researcher of that decade.
No question about it.
And
Roswell,
Roswell.
Roswell.
MJ-12.
MJ-12.
Yeah,
Man,
took him
man,
down.
man.
I'm quite convinced the
Woo.
guy who really, more than anyone else, took Bill Moore down was Robert Hastings.
Yeah.
Robert Hastings, who did UFOs and nukes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a whole other story.
Can you imagine? I mean, can you imagine somebody like that in our community, right? Like you. Okay, somebody like you or Linda, right? Stepping up at the podium of the MUFON International Symposium going, all right, man, you know what? I gotta come clean. I'm a paid informant for the, and then run off the stage. And just, what? And that's what happened. And
yeah, I think he put it a little differently than that. To be
but
fair
you
to him,
but
to
you
be
understand you understand what I'm saying.
Bill Moore, I don't think personally that he was actively trying to sow confusion and BS into the UFO field. I don't think
Not
that
at
he was.
all.
I think he was,
maybe a little bit, but I think he was more after you mentioned this earlier. You have to feed the kitty. So he did so many big things and he had to continue. He had to have the next document. He had to have the next thing. He had to have the next thing. And Doty and others were there to feed him this so he could continue speaking. I remember
Moore believed that his phrase was he could separate the shit from the candy. So in other words, what the CIA or any other agencies was going to give him, he believed that by working with these guys, he was going to get to the center of the labyrinth. Like he really believed it. And so he was willing to pay the price of making a deal with the devil, so to speak, because he believed that he would be able to get to the holy grail of the ultimate truth and proof about the UFO reality and cover-up. I think that's what he was trying to do. I think that was his motivation.
In Los Angeles, check this out. 1985. I'm going to go 85 on this. It was off the air by 86. But around 85 on KABC talk radio here in Los Angeles, on once a week on Saturday nights, it was amazing. They had this talk show, AM radio, called Open Minds Radio with Dave. I'll think of his last name here in a second. Somebody pop it up in the chat. It was out for like 2 years. I'm listening to it. And I've since gone back and found the tapes of this show. He's got friggin' Bill Moore on. Yeah.
When was that?
1985.
Wow.
And so I'm listening to this. And you've got to go and listen to it. Bill Moore goes, man, I just got this. And knowing what we know now, right? Knowing what we know now. He's talking about Sidonia. He's got these new images from NASA that were leaked to him. He's got a letter about some crash retrieval that was just passed around the Pentagon, and he's getting ready to leak this letter. And none of this stuff made light of day, right? But he's on Open Minds talking about all of these documents that he's about to leak. And I'm sitting there today, you listen to it, and you go, I wonder if that was typed up by Doty. I wonder where this document is.
Well, in 1985, he was sitting on the MJ-12 documents and no one
That's
knew.
right. That's right.
So he had
Dave Jenkins, that's his name, Dave Jenkins. I think I got that right. No, not Alejandro Rojas. No, this is Open Minds Radio on KABC. Dave Jenkins was his name. And so Dave goes, so what are you doing for the rest of the year? And I swear, Bill Moore goes, well, I'm off to Denver for the MUFON convention. Then I'm flying over to Berlin. I've got a UFO conference over there. And then I've got to go over to London. I'll be there the next month. And then I'm coming back here. I'm going to be speaking in New York. And then I'm going to come back and I'm speaking in San Francisco and then down back here in Los Angeles for another thing. And he goes, wow, pretty much for the next 2 years, every week I'm speaking somewhere around the world. That was Bill Moore. And you need to go and listen to this interview, man. It is incredible.
And to put that in perspective, the 1980s did not have the kind of conference culture that happened in years later. Like there just was not a lot going on in terms of that. So for Moore to have all of that set up was pretty intense.
Look, somebody just said KABC radio. Okay, somebody just said open mind with Bill Jenkins. All right, there. KABC, open mind, Bill Jenkins, not Dave Jenkins, with Bill Moore. Here it is, right here. KABC, open mind with Bill Jenkins. Bill interviews crash retrievals and the Philadelphia.
By the way, the thing about, I mentioned Robert Hastings being basically the guy who took Moore down. I think he was, because in the year or two leading up to Moore's, let's say, confession in July 1989 at MUFON, Hastings had been writing some seriously powerful exposés of Moore's shady claims and his weird connections to the intelligence community. Hastings was sniffing it out, man. He was onto it. And he wrote some damning pieces about Moore in the lead up to that. And I've always felt, I've never talked to either of them about this, but I always had this feeling that Moore felt like the game was up because Hastings had kind of exposed his intelligence community connections already. And so I think he probably just thought, I've got to come out with this, because these were articles in the MUFON UFO Journal, which at that time, if you were in the UFO community, you read the MUFON UFO Journal for sure. So all the relevant people were aware of these allegations that had been levied on him by Hastings. And I think that's what prompted Moore to give his confession.
Let's take our break right here. Stay right there, Richard. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. We'll be right back. More with Richard Dolan after this short break. Stay with us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and get the Fade to Black official podcast. 2,000 episodes, all of them commercial free for just $2 a month. Watch Into the Vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? How you doing? Jimmy Church here. Special announcement. Get your Fade to Black t-shirts. That's right. Help support the show. Help support everything that we do over here. We've got 2 t-shirts. We've got 2 ways to get them. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. Go Backley Tappy. Go to jimmychurchradio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. Today we're headed to Bolivia, Tiwanaku, Peru, and of course, Pumapunku. Brian, exciting. Thank you so much for everything, my friend.
Always an honor. Right behind us is the sacred river of the Inca that goes past Machu Picchu. So we're going to be driving up to its source at 15,000 feet above sea level and then down to Lake Titicaca.
So today we hit 15,000 feet.
Yes.
Crazy. And you can do it with us. All you have to do is go to hiddenincatours.com. Simple. We've got 2 tours coming up next year, one in June for the summer solstice, right? And then another one right here in November. So hiddenincatours.com. Come and hang out with Brian and I and his amazing team.
Right on.
River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All right, welcome back. Richard Dolan is our guest tonight, and we're just talking about UFOs and whatever Richard and I managed to wiggle into the conversation. Richard, I just wanted to let you know, I just posted the video of you dancing to Ice Cube.
What? There's a karaoke picture of me from somewhere dancing to Ice Cube. Not sure I remember that.
Yeah.
Was I in my right mind?
Yeah, you. We were somewhere in the country. I don't remember where, and I came out.
Oh my God.
For a break in front of the hotel, and you were out there, and this car pulled up, blasting some music, and you let loose, and I grabbed, I started shooting you from behind, and then you spun around and looked at me, and then kept dancing, and
move.
And you said, "Don't ever post that, man. Don't ever."
So you just did.
And there were. Can I say why you didn't want me to post it?
I probably look terrible.
No. He had a cigarette in his hand.
Oh yeah.
Probably
had a cigarette, man.
Yeah, you did. You had a cigarette.
I don't smoke cigarettes any longer.
No, you don't. But at that time,
it was my secret vice.
Yeah, you spun around. You're down. You got a cigarette hanging out of your mouth, man. And it's so funny. You pulled the cigarette down and put it behind you, and then you kept down. Anyway,
I used to jokingly call myself an Obama smoker because Obama was president, and everyone knew he was a secret smoker.
Right.
And I was like,
it was so funny. You came up to me and you go, "Jimmy, it's not that I was dancing." I said, "Dude, you're a good dancer," and you are, by the way. And who knew? And you go, "It's the cigarette, man. You can't have that cigarette."
Yeah, that nasty little cigarette.
Yeah.
Well, when I smoked them, I enjoyed them back at the time, but I'm very glad that I don't.
Yeah. Good for you.
Yeah.
I've given up Haagen-Dazs, but there's certain things I just that give me joy. So back to this subject.
Yeah.
I want to touch a little bit on the subject. I think it's controversial, and that is hiding behind DOPSR and NDAs and these agreements, and therefore you can't talk about UFOs and crash retrievals and locations. Do you believe that? And if that's the case, I think that these whistleblowers should go public with these documents. I think we need to see, the public needs to see where our government in writing has said you cannot discuss crash retrievals of craft not of this earth, because that's a huge bombshell if that is indeed the case. And I don't like hiding behind this when it comes to stepping up to the edge of the cliff, but nobody wants to jump over because they're hiding behind some document that nobody has ever seen. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't doubt it. We have a society that is dominated by classifications and secrecy. It's a massive part. I think I recall there was a book from 20 years ago, I think, called Blank Spots on the Map. It's a pretty good book. And I think that author said at the time is something like a full 50% of all U.S. government documents are classified in one form or another.
Mm-hmm.
It's a deeply a pervasive problem. And when you're getting into the world of special access programs and this type of thing, it does appear that just as Jake Barber talked about, he had to have layers and layers of genuine cover for his activities. I think that's true. And also within the classified world, I believe that this is how it also works, that you've got secret programs within secret programs within secret programs. They're nested inside each other. And, you talk to any one of these people who've had those types of experiences, and they do not mess around with those security clearances. They take them absolutely more seriously than anything else.
But I respect that. I respect that. And there is a need for secrecy for so many reasons, but that's not my point. Everybody screams about proof and photographs and video and paperwork. That would be, you want proof of something going on? Produce an NDA that says in it from our government that you cannot talk about crash retrievals and flying saucers. That would be
great, but is that even possible? Why would that be possible to do? If you or I had to sign such an NDA, what do you think the odds are that it's perfectly fine for us to just present that in public with no legal repercussions?
Well, there's nothing secret that is about the NDA.
What is in the NDA is very likely secret. It's very likely classified. Why wouldn't it be? Of course it would be.
You can't, that these subjects shall remain secret. Well, you're not discussing the content of the subjects. You're just revealing the bullet points.
I don't know how they word it. I'm sure they've got good lawyers and they know exactly how to phrase everything that they want to phrase. But if we were involved in a special access program that dealt with reverse engineering and alien craft, the NDA might not refer. It probably wouldn't refer to an alien craft. I mean, why would they be so stupid as to do that?
And so then what's stopping? If it's not specified,
the NDA would say, I am not to refer to anything relating to this program, which happens to be about reverse engineering alien craft, but I can't mention that. I guarantee the language is in there. Like you can't refer to this. You can't. I mean, I do know that in some of these areas, like with the Pentagon and so forth, you can't just say no comment to something because that's essentially akin to an admission. So right. I suspect that if you're talking about producing an NDA, I doubt that it's that simple.
But all of the leaked documents, WikiLeaks and things that have been and the Holy Grail, we haven't seen that. Out of all of the crazy documents that have, not one Dobser that says you can't talk about flying saucers and crash retrievals. Not one NDA.
Maybe that should tell us something.
That
just
not
how
one
significant and how serious.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm calling it the Holy Grail.
We've had a few things that did come out that I think are quite significant, and I will always refer to the Eric Davis, Thomas Wilson notes
for sure,
which came out over 5 years ago now, in which, to the great shame of much of the UFO community, a lot of people were just trashing it and saying it was ridiculous and nonsense, and it has now been fully authenticated by none other than Eric Davis himself, also Jacques Vallée and lots of other people. So we know that conversation was real. And what was discussed in that conversation was of extreme significance, even though it wasn't a formal government document.
you were one of the, if we turn back the clocks to the day that you and I opened up our email together, and I called you and I said, I've got this document. And you said, what document do you have? And I told you, and you go, I've got the same one.
Yeah.
And then we find out how we both, it happened to be on the same day, which was very strange. But anyway, so you and I, that phone conversation that lasted a couple hours, you and I went through every
Yeah.
page.
Yeah.
And you had said to me then, which I thought was interesting, you brought up Oak Shannon out of the
Yeah.
document in that first
Right.
conversation. I didn't know who Oak Shannon was at the time, but Oak Shannon really freaked you out. And then you came on Fade to Black that week to talk about the document, and that you had a page or two that you had mentioned on my show a couple of years before. You mentioned the pages of that
A couple
document.
of months before. It wasn't even
Yeah,
that
a
long.
couple of months before.
Yeah.
Right. And but
Yeah.
you went out on the limb. I'm bringing all of this up for context with everybody, because Richard and I were freaking out, generally freaking out. I went on Coast to Coast that week. You and I talked on Tuesday or Monday. I went on Coast to Coast on Friday with Stephen Greer, right? I called up Stephen. I sent him the documents. I brought him immediately on Coast to Coast.
Yeah.
So for context, right after all of this, where so many were very negative about that document, you went public, not only on Fade to Black, but it any way
Everywhere.
that you could
Yeah.
to say, you know what, this shit is real.
That's right.
You went out. What motivated you?
I was 100% certain that I was right.
Yes.
There was no. Sometimes I'll have doubts about this or that, but on this one, I knew for a fact that I was right. I had been shown several pages of that document in 2006, long time before, and I had talked about the contents of the document. I didn't talk publicly that I had read this document. That would have been too far. The source that showed it to me, that would not have been a good thing for me to do.
Well, okay, let me remind everybody.
Yeah.
I'm remembering this right now. I said to Richard one night on Fade to Black, I go, Richard, I want the secret stuff right now. If
That's
there
right.
is one piece of if there is one thing that you would stand behind and go, and nobody knows about, what would that be? And you brought up the document.
I did. It was
show.
the first time that I'd ever mentioned that it was a document.
That's right.
At the end of 2018 when we had this conversation. As I recall, you asked something similar. It was like, have you ever been exposed to something that was so powerful that you still haven't really talked about?
That's right.
I think that's what you asked me. And
Yeah.
And at that point, I just thought to myself, the hell with it. I'm just going to talk about this. Because for several years in 2007, 2008, 2009, I actually did talk about the contents of that document. And I did talk about Admiral Thomas R. Wilson as well. I had pictures of him on my various lectures and presentations that I gave. And I also quoted, without explicitly stating, a line from Davis's document where Wilson said, "This was not of this earth, not made by man, not by human hands," which Davis had in italics there. And I mentioned that line several times. So I was quite explicit about it. So when then you asked me about that at the end of 2018, and I went further than I'd gone before by saying, yes, this was a document that was shown to me by someone who's very close to the source. And then a few months after that, we were both sent the full version of that document from an anonymous source. And I still do not know who that person is, by the way.
Neither do. Well, I kind of do.
All right. Well,
I kind of do. Hey, he's not with us anymore. He's not of this earth anymore. He has since passed away.
Tell me sometime later. I'd like to know. But so then when the document was, so I remember, I don't know if I told this to you. I told to Grant Cameron, who had the documents before either of us did, of course. He got them from James Rigney. This story is all out in the open. Everyone knows this now. Grant said to me before the document was publicized, he said, "Well, now you're in the box I'm in." And it's true, because neither of us wanted to be the one who was going to leak the documents out. I didn't want to be that guy, but I wanted someone to do it. And I did say that if no one was to leak the document by, I didn't really have a deadline, but by later, much later in the year, that I was going to do it. And I think I would have, but someone else did it. They beat me to it and I didn't have to worry about it. And it leaked to an email thread that I was part of. And it wasn't fully public, but it was public enough that I knew this was not going to be contained now. And so that's when I did a video for my YouTube channel. And I think I was the one who kind of like publicized it first. And then we were off to the races. And then all the people were like, that's a hoax. That's a movie script, all of this nonsense. None of that was true. And then there are these other people came out of the woodwork. It's like, who are these people? I've never heard of you before. And they're just trashing it over and over again. And it really felt like there was an op going on to muddy this field. But the reason that document is so important, it's even now, if you haven't read the Davis Wilson notes, the reason it matters is that Eric Davis, a brilliant scientist who was in with the in crowd, the Robert Bigelow crowd, essentially, went out and met with Thomas Wilson 5 years after the meeting with Greer. And this is now in 2002. And Davis's group had known all about Wilson's meeting and how that it, because Edgar Mitchell was part of their crowd, and Edgar Mitchell had been with Stephen Greer. So there was that connection. So they knew that something had happened, but they wanted to get the dirt directly from Wilson. And Davis was able to do that. And he had a deep, detailed conversation. And here's Thomas Wilson, who had been deputy head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, later became head of the Joint Chiefs Intelligence and head of the DIA, saying to Davis, yes, I actually had some success in finding this alien reverse engineering program, and I was denied access by the gatekeepers of the program, but they told me certain things, like we had a craft, we had a trouble figuring this craft out, and there was a list.
They even said people, to him, they said, "Do you want to see it?" That was pretty great. Do you want to see it? We think it can fly.
Yeah, that's right. They said, we think it can fly. Wilson said, it is your mistake by not allowing me oversight over this program. And they said, no, this was not our mistake. Why am I not on the list? We don't have to tell you why you're not on the list. Well, I'm going to go complain up the chain of command. Go right ahead. We don't really care.
Yell as loud as you want.
They were not afraid of him at all. He did go back to D.C. He did complain, and he was threatened with his career. All of this he told to Davis, who meticulously wrote it out in more than 15 pages. So when I learned about this back in 2006, I knew, like, if Wilson were to admit this, that could cause the whole house of cards to come down, I thought. Someone of that stature. Well, Wilson's never admitted it, so there's that. There's that final piece of the puzzle. He's never going to admit it. Why would he? When you leave the federal government, you go out and work with the private contractors, which Wilson has done, worked for a big aerospace company after he left DIA in a senior position, obviously. Generally, for what I have learned is that your clearances get better when you go into the private world, and they become more numerous. And the stakes become higher, not lower, when you leave federal government service. So this was told to me very explicitly in an interview I did with Dr. Kit Green, formerly of the CIA. He said this explicitly to me. When you leave government service, typically, he said, it's, predictable. He said, if you've gotten any career behind you, you will get hired by the private contractors and your clearances will become better. So that's what happened to Wilson, undoubtedly. Of course, he's never going to give up this information, because and we're going back to the whole Dobson effect and why is there no holy grail documents? Because these people, this is their life. And it's not a world that I understand because I've never been in that world. So it's hard for me to know, like, the pressure that they must be under. I have no doubt it's intense.
Well, okay. Now,
one person described it like the mafia. It's like you don't always even sign a document. You're not always signing a document. It's like They know, and you know, you are never to talk about this.
Well,
or things
okay.
get
And
very
so
bad for you.
that's one aspect. Now let's devil's advocate this thing a little bit, right? Let's flip it around. Then you have those that are not telling the truth and are hiding behind an NDA that doesn't exist, right? And they're just making stuff up,
Oh
and
yeah,
they can't
grifters.
tell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's the other part about this. You know,
Yes, that's true.
and
You're absolutely right. It's a
I, I
problem.
have I have issues with that, and
Yeah.
it messes with those that are legit.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, if you're legit, show us the cover
Well,
page.
you're really
You know,
hitting on something. This is
yeah,
important because how do you tell the difference?
you can't.
Jake Barber, perfect case in point. So we're told that his background's legitimate. It seems like it is. So maybe he's not a good example, but there's been a lot of other people who've, come forward, made all of these claims about their background, and the claims are just often not true. They're making stuff up.
And
It does
how do
happen.
we? Oh, and with the little time that we have left, we have another issue that is right in front of us. I spoke to a lot of media outlets over the last month for interviews about this, which are the drones over New Jersey. And it's not just New Jersey, by the way.
No,
It's
no, no.
Boston, it's Vandenberg Air Force Base out here. It's all kinds of sensitive
It's the United
areas.
Kingdom. It's Ramstein Air Base in Germany. It's a lot of other
Ramstein
places.
shut down Ramstein, right?
Yes, that's right.
And what was interesting when the press release came out about Ramstein, I want to move on to what the White House had to say about this yesterday.
Yeah.
But Ramstein said, well, they were definitely not amateurs. That was in the press release, and you're like, what? This is like a serious situation. And so, like with Vandenberg, so they turned around and they made an arrest of a Chinese national boarding a flight at LAX, going back to Beijing after he did the video of Vandenberg Space Force Base. And he said, I'm just an enthusiast of boats. What are you doing after we catch you, boarding a flight to China? If you're just an innocent student that happens to be a Chinese national flying a drone with a 4K video camera over Vandenberg Space Force Base, you've got some splaining to do. So the White House, in the new press secretary, in her first
Caroline Leavitt, I think, right?
Yep. From the press room at the White House, said, I'm going to paraphrase, but that all of the drones were research approved by the FAA.
Yeah.
Now, that pissed me off.
Yeah, it's not credible. It's totally not credible. It's the same nonsense that we were hearing from the previous administration, and now we're getting it with the Trump team. So, very low level answer, very poor answer.
If they could have given that poor answer a month and a half ago, they could have said that then.
It's not a credible answer,
right?
Obviously, I mean the drones. We call them drones. I think there's a mistake there. I don't think they're all realistically described as drones. A lot of them described as orbs, or even beyond that, triangles and other types of craft that are actually what once upon a time we would have called UFOs. The capabilities of some of these objects are quite baffling. They're not ordinary drones for sure. Their size, we hear about SUV size, much larger than what you get with the hobbyist or most commercial drones. Some military, we got the Reaper, the Predator, but most of the drones are not this type of size. But on top of that, they have incredible loitering capability. We're talking 5-6 hours at a time. You do not have even high-level drones. I am not aware that they can do that. You're talking very advanced type of system here. But then you've got speed, you got maneuverability. Some of them have shown instant acceleration. sharp, very sharp turns, and they're very stealthy. Like sometimes they're described as giving no thermal signatures or radar signals. Some of them are undetectable. They've been seen to disappear and reappear essentially instantly. This is what you get with UFO reports, which we've had for years and years. Emerging from the ocean, we're told, or at least coming in from the ocean, harassing a U.S. Coast Guard ship. I think there was like a dozen of them hovering at like 300 feet altitude. Come on, let's just get real here. We're not talking about research by the FAA. And of course, that has no connection to the United Kingdom, where the FAA has no jurisdiction, I'll just say, or Germany or Denmark, where there are also such sightings. So there's obviously something very, very bizarre going on here. But of course, if you're the Trump team or the Biden team, ask yourself, how do you talk about this to the world? Like in an honest way. Like, if you'd say that this is an unexplained thing, which it is unexplained. There is no simple answer to this. Like, oh yeah, this is our project. This is a classified program, and we're just flying them all over New Jersey and Long Island and lower New York State. And yeah, we're gonna have to shut down airspace for like a month, which they did, or at least no drone activity, closing airports. Some military bases were affected. Are you kidding me that this is an FAA research?
They shut down Boston Logan Airport. They make an arrest, 2 individuals on an island adjacent to the airport that the FAA triangulated and found out where the operators were. They arrested them. Okay. Now, are you telling me that was a FAA sanctioned research trip? No, these are 2 guys that shut down Boston Logan Airport.
Well, what the Trump people would say, because as part of the statement today, which yesterday, which was that, yeah, there's FAA sanctioned research and other various things, I think she said, but she did mention that there's a lot of people flying their drones, and a lot of people did get into the act. She did say that, in fairness. So what she would probably say to you is that, well, yeah, that was these two goons from Boston who were causing additional trouble, I would imagine. But how do you explain what happened to the Coast Guard? How do you explain the reports that these came from the ocean? How do you explain, like, did some goofball shut down Wright-Patterson Air Force Base as well, or Pickaninny Arsenal in New Jersey? All of this? Seriously? And what about all the times where Langley Air Force Base a year before was having constant incursions over there? You know, one thing that I would just remind people in terms of history of this phenomenon is this is an old story. 40 years ago in lower New York State, we were having the famous Hudson Valley sightings, where over the Taconic Parkway for days and weeks and months and years in the early 80s, thousands of motorists and witnesses just north of New York City were seeing these boomerangs hovering low over the road, shining lights down on them, and then just taking off. And, you know, at that time as well, what's the government going to say? What's the FAA going to say? Yeah, there are these huge boomerangs, and we don't know who they belong to. We can't seem to do anything about it, but we think that they're not they're not dangerous. Yeah, that's not a good answer. So they just lied to the public. 10 years before that, in the mid-70s, there was a series of utterly awesome, mind-blowing violations of military bases across the United States going into Canada, from Maine through Michigan to Montana and north of that and beyond, where objects would just hover low over nuclear weapons storage facilities, hanging out at like 100, 200 feet above, bases going on high alert, alarms. I mean, you could have made a movie about some of these. And they just like all of these UFO flaps or waves that happen, they happen for a while and then they go away as if it never happened. And you get no resolution. There's no resolution on those sightings from the 70s. There's no resolution from the Hudson Valley sightings from the early 1980s. After all these years, we do not. And you could say that with any one of the many violations of military airspace that UFOs have done for generations, or any of the major waves of sightings that have taken place over the many, many years. In other words, this is an old story. We've been through this song before.
I am in the middle of reading for like the 10th time Leonard Stringfield's book from 1975, Red Alert. I think that's what it's called, Red Alert.
Situation Red.
Situation Red.
Is that right? No, what the? Yeah, I think so.
That's pretty close.
From 76. Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah, Red is in the title. And right at that same time is J. Allen Hynek's book, The Report on Project Blue Book.
Yeah.
Both came out at about the same time.
The Hynek Report.
Yeah, the Hynek Report. And in Stringfield's book, and this is also in Hynek's book, but in Stringfield's book, he's got a couple of chapters on crash retrievals.
Yeah.
And case upon case upon case upon case. You know, we want to focus on, and we should, you know, the cases that we do. But when you say that this is nothing new, go and that book is 50 years old, man. 50 years old. There's a story.
That book kickstarted, really kickstarted the whole crash retrieval research endeavor in the UFO community. That book.
It's so powerful. And in the book, you'll know specifically the case, but there he talks about this airplane is under duress and is landing at an Air Force base, and they're kind of freaking out. They board, and the crew is dead and chopped up and chopped apart. They don't know what's going on. They go in. The pilot and the co-pilot have Colt 45s that they have emptied in the cabin, but they didn't shoot each other, and they're both dead. They shot out the windows, right? They were shooting at something. And that's a case that should have been on the cover of front page of newspapers. And there was a lot was written up internally on the case, but the press and the media and everybody else never knew anything about that. And what Stringfield goes on to suggest is that they were shooting at something that was a very close proximity to their own aircraft, and they were defending themselves, and whatever damaged the craft and killed the crew, right, the passengers, all of them were dead, that the pilot's only defense was Colt 45s, which you're going to shoot at something that's very close to your craft from the front. And I just find that to be really interesting.
That case. He had a lot of interesting cases in that book. That one I haven't looked at that in a long time. The interesting thing about that book, from my point of view, is that Stringfield talked about the Kingman, Arizona UFO crash for the first time. He got his research from Ray Fowler, who, by the way, is still alive. Ray Fowler is in his 90s. He's still kicking. But Ray Fowler did a lot of research on the Kingman UFO event of 1953, which, by the way, got a very good measure of support from a leaked signal conversation by Christopher Mellon last summer, if people remember that. Stringfield wrote about that Kingman crash in that book, and that, more than anything else, I think kicked off research into the whole idea of crash retrievals and retrievals of UFOs. Stringfield's one of my UFO heroes. He's a great guy.
Mine too.
Amazing.
Well,
career.
One of the it's such a time capsule of a book. So when you go to 1975, 1976, the book is published. He's talking about cases as recently as 1974, 75 in the book, but he's covering some of the historical stuff too. He never, obviously, mentions Roswell. Right. He talks about Aztec in there. He also he opens the book, if you remember, with a classroom at Colorado University in Denver, in Boulder, where this man comes out and speaks to the class
Yeah.
about UFOs and crash retrievals and makes it into the newspaper there.
It was 1950.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Person with no name. Nobody knew who the secret speaker was at the college. But he goes into big detail on that. And I have read that chapter over and over and over again. Do you know who that speaker was?
Yeah. The name is on the tip of my tongue. It's well known. This is all covered to a large extent by Frank Scully in 1950 in his book, Behind the Flying Saucers, where there were two individuals and he kind of combined them into one called Dr. G, which he described. But it was, oh man, the people who really, I wish I could remember this off the top of my head, but Scott and Suzanne Ramsey, who are just two wonderful, wonderful people, wrote the book on the Aztec UFO crash, and they got into all of this in great detail. But essentially, you had there was a lecture. It was in Denver. I didn't think Boulder. Maybe Boulder.
It was at the university in Boulder.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. Boulder and Denver are the same city, man. Same city. It's a suburb.
Yeah, right. So in March of 1950, he gave a talk on this, and that actually, I think that is the source of the famous FBI memo. It's the most sought after FBI memo in all of FOIA, where they're talking about a claim of a recovery of a UFO and a short alien being. And this was discussed in this lecture in 1950 by this man. His name, it's well-known name. He's a known person. His name just escapes me at the moment. Sorry.
Well, he says in the lecture, that's not the only crash retrieval from that area. There was the one in Aztec, and there was another one 500 miles from where I am standing right now. And one would wonder, is he talking about Roswell or is he talking about something else? But he said that Aztec wasn't the only crash in 1948. There was one before that.
Well, there's a few potential crashes of these objects prior to 1950. And we know of some, Ryan Wood has done the best book on this, of course, which he has just revised, Magic Eyes Only. It's a great book on over 100 potential crashes of UFOs. And Ryan did great work on this, but there's a few from the 40s. So we all know about Aztec, 1948. We all know about Roswell, 1947. We now know about the Trinity crash of 1945, which Jacques Vallée and Paola Harris wrote about. But there's others as well. There's other, at least alleged cases. So I'm not sure which ones he meant. Maybe Roswell. But Stringfield did not write about Roswell, as you mentioned correctly. And that's because I think that book was published in 1976, if I'm not mistaken. And the Roswell case was dead until the world rediscovered Jesse Marcel, which wasn't going to happen for another year or two after that. So the Roswell case had kind of fallen away. It had the one-day headline in the Roswell Daily Record, and a couple of other newspapers carried it, and it just died immediately. And UFO researchers were terrified of this.
But Scully never mentioned Roswell in any of his books. Donald Kehoe never mentioned Roswell.
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's a really, is it proof of the art of the cover-up is real? Yeah, I would say that.
Totally, yes, it does.
Yeah. There's
Absolutely.
that part, and how effective it is, and then how when you have somebody as tenacious as Donald Kehoe was, he was a pit bull. Like, I did not play around, and but never covered Roswell.
That generation, those guys in the 50s and 60s, think about what they were up against. So first of all, they had the whole world pointing and laughing at them, and UFOs were just a big joke. Flying saucers basically did not have any respect whatsoever. They were ruthlessly ridiculed at every opportunity. And so UFO researchers at that time had a real credibility issue, and they were just terrified of anything that seemed too weird to them. So abductions, forget that. crash retrievals? Are you kidding me? That sounds too outrageous. And so they wouldn't go there. They were terrified. And some of them, to openly talked about this. Donald Kehoe's a number 2 guy at NICAP for many years was Richard Hall, who's no longer alive either. Richard Hall was quite upfront in years later. He said, NICAP had, we had like 10 or a dozen or so potential crash retrieval cases that came to us. And we just never, he said they just didn't take them seriously.
When you listen to Long John Nebel's show, especially in the 50s, it was just incredible. And the Party Line. And Kehoe was on that show all the time. And all of 40 and that whole circle, that whole
Sure,
thing.
yeah.
But one of the subjects that they talk about a lot was Nazi flying saucers. Man, once a week, and that show was
Back
on.
Then. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. I'm a big study of all of that early radio. I love it and how they handled it. But all of the big names, and they would sit around and talk, and I can go on and on and on and on about Arthur C. Clarke was on that show, and it was just fascinating to listen to. But Nazi UFOs, Nazi secret flying saucer technology. Yeah, man. Talked about that. No Roswell. No. It's really strange to me. So with all of that, with all of the history and where we are right now, the idea of today where we have, a Sean Kirkpatrick or a Mick West, I don't think their influence has reached Congress. I don't think it's reached the Senate. I don't think the debunking aspect of this subject is something that our lawmakers and Capitol Hill take seriously. I think that they're really looking at this subject. Where do you think 2025 is going to lead?
I think the debunkers are definitely on the back foot these days. I think it's really tough for them. Rightly so. It's, the problem is it's not necessary for me or for you or for any UFO researcher to prove that UFOs are alien. I don't need to do that. All I need to do is to prove that the United States government has been interested in this when they said they weren't, which is absolutely provable. And then that leads to other questions. Why were they interested? Well, that's a good question. Well, that's when you go into the declassified documents and you see, well, some of them did think that there were real flying saucers. Oh, the military people were encountering flying saucers. Oh, they tried to intercept them and they couldn't succeed. Oh, these objects were seen hovering at an altitude of 200 feet over the nuclear weapons and then just took off. Like you read these cases, so that doesn't prove that UFOs are alien, but it sure as hell does prove that they are unexplained and they are interesting and they are important and they demand an explanation. One of those explanations could very well be they don't come from here because they are just so advanced seemingly in ways that we do not know how to match. So it's, the UFO subject demands a certain amount of a willingness not to demand proof at every turn, because this is not a subject that plays well like that. If you're dealing with an intelligence, like just hypothetically, that is smarter than you, lots smarter than you, vastly smarter than you, well, you're not going to be able to have the ability to just control them like you're monitoring a virus in a laboratory. They're not going to behave like that, particularly if that intelligence does not want you to know about what they're doing for good or bad reasons. Could be perfectly good reasons. We honestly think that we have the psychological capability of standing face to face with one of these beings, like for real? We talk about this all the time, like, oh yeah, I'd love to meet an alien. I'd love to go on a ship. Seriously? Do you really think so? Let's like get down to reality here. They have an IQ that's multiple times greater than ours, probably. They're probably telepathic. They're probably part of a hive mind. Now, some people will say, oh, but they're wonderful and they're loving. Well, some of them may be, yeah. I don't know if they all are. But even if they're not all evil, do you really, people don't like being in front of a genius who's able to understand everything about them. How are they going to want to deal with a hyper intelligent alien that may not laugh at all of your jokes and may not think that your consciousness is all that cracked up to what it should be? I mean, look what we spend most of our time thinking about most of the day. I mean, we like to pretend that we're, serious, but everyone would goof off probably more time than we work for most of us. So if you're an alien that's super intelligent, do we honestly think we can handle them? It's a really good question to think about. And so there's a lot of reasons why they wouldn't necessarily think that we can hang out with them. So they may just say, yeah, it's like, I can't let these humans see me. It'd be like stepping in a garden and stepping on the flowers. Because we like to think that we can handle these things. I'm not so sure. And so if we're not in control of this experiment, at least very much, what makes us think that we're just going to get all the proof we demand? We've got to do some work here. The UFO subject is like that. It's a demanding subject.
It is. And one would have to, I don't want to bring hubris into the equation here, right? But today, it was announced of the analysis of the samples brought back from the asteroid Bennu. Now, we have known for a long time about meteorites containing amino acids and basic sugars and panspermia and the questions of this, right? Okay. But Bennu and the samples that they brought back, 120 grams, about the size of a bar of soap, right? Okay. Are you ready for this? In this sample were the five, there's five, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 5 components of DNA. Not 4 of the 5, all 5.
Wow.
Every cool thing that makes life on this planet, all of them were in the sample.
How about that?
All of them. Proteins, right? And then it was also announced, I can go through it. Also, they announced that I think the number is 80. I'm speaking in general terms, don't quote me. 80 types of protein. 40 are found on Earth. The other 40, the other half, according to the press release, were new.
Wow. Yeah.
That's so don't talk to me about us being all there is.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've been on a pretty cool path, like amazing path these last couple of centuries. Yeah, we're doing some amazing things, but we just got here. We just got to this level, and there's more levels, there's more science, there's more knowledge beyond this. And I have no doubt we are not at the level of where these other beings
can't be. And to think about the vastness of the universe, which is infinite, by the way, right? Okay, so that's pretty damn big. I don't know about you, but infinite's a pretty friggin' big number. And the vastness of everything. And we just launch a satellite to one little speck of dust, this asteroid Bennu, and find everything. Yeah. Right? So how much of that is it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Stop with the discussion, man. Yeah. I don't want to hear about it. I don't care how cocky you are, or how smart you are, or how educated you are. Life is everywhere. DNA is everywhere. It's universal.
And you know what? Look, they can get here. All the astronomers say, oh, the distances are too vast. You have no idea. Like, look, you know what? There's a way. And we know there's a way because they are here. They figured it out. Are they bending space-time? Maybe that's what they're doing. Are they figuring out a different way? I don't know. They figured a way out. They've got it. And some of these scientists and these skeptics are so hidebound. They're just absolutely convinced that they're correct on this. They don't bother to look at the evidence. Alan Hynek, put the attitude very well. He says it's like it can't be, therefore it isn't. That's how he characterized their attitude. I think that's about right.
Be careful how you want to stand on that pedestal. Just be careful, and if you're so what's that guy's Brian Cox, that physicist out of England, right? You know why I like Brian Cox? Because he played bass in a heavy metal band, a death metal band, and then went to college and learned physics and became who he is today. He's got a great background, right? Okay. You know why I don't like him? Because he insists he is the final word on knowledge. And that's a bad place to be, man.
Yeah,
that's a bad place. You should be very careful, because something's going to come along and is going to swing a bat.
That is hubris.
Hubris, man. Hubris. And
pride cometh before the fall.
Every time. Richard, my man, thank you so much. And give my best to Tracy. Oh, hold on. My last note on my page here. You almost got away. You almost got out of here. The last note, it says, what's up with the USO book? I'm tired of waiting. That's what it says.
Well, good. I'm glad. So I'm very pleased with this book. The writing is completely done. Everything is done. I just wrapping up the index. I'm doing all of this myself, so I'm publishing it. But it's done. I think it could be published even in a week.
In a week.
Now, this is volume 1. So it's 400 pages.
Right.
Volume 2 and volume 3, all those cases are written. For those 2 volumes, I got to create the chapters and create chapter introductions, but it's not that difficult. So each book will be separated maybe by a couple of months at the most, 2 months, maybe 3. So by middle of the year, I expect them all to be out. The first volume, I'm so happy with it. I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased with this book. People will be like, it only goes up to the end of 1969, but it's so amazing. It's incredible. The illustrations are great. I created maps for every single case. Every case, I have a map in there. I've got categories and data. There's so much in this book. It blew my mind writing it. Volume 2 will actually be larger than volume 1, and that only covers 20 years, the 1970s and the 1980s. That's it. But the unbelievable amount of activity. And then volume 3 covers 1990 through the end of 2024.
Are you going to send copies to
and that's even longer still.
Tim Burchett? You're going to send copies to Tim Burchett?
Yeah, I'm going to get copies out. I've had review copies to a number of individuals who were very gracious in being readers for the book. But yeah, I'll get copies out to a bunch of people.
Well, Tim Burchett did his USO statement the other day, which I thought was very interesting.
It's fascinating. You're hearing a lot about this phenomenon, these water-based objects, and I'm glad that they're getting the attention they deserve. It just happened that 2.5 years ago, I thought, I want to look at this. And I didn't even expect to write a 3-volume piece on it, but that's what I ended up doing. It became absolutely absorbing.
Richard, thank you so much, my friend. Give my best to Tracy. I'll see you in a few months out here. You're going to be out here for Contact in the Desert, so yes, we'll see you then. My friend, thank you so much. Behave and be well. The best. The community thanks you, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here, Jimmy.
Always the best. Richard Dolan, everybody. Richard Dolan members, the links are below on our website and throughout social media. Have a great night, Richard.
Thank you.
Perfect night on the show. Absolutely perfect. I'm watching my camera. It's slowly trying. I got to go crank a bolt. You can see that's a monitor. You see that? That's a curved monitor that's about to overtake me. I'm sitting up. I'm having to raise my chair because my camera's moving down. So I'm going to get out of here before that happens. I want everybody to be safe. Tomorrow night on Fade to Black, it's our once a month AJAAMA. Yeah. So I'll see everybody tomorrow night. Until then, go Backley Tappy. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go Backley Tappy.